Liquorland are proud partners of the AskPiesNation podcast for another season of footy. Enjoy winter your way with Liquorland. And Marcus, even though winter's now upon us, there's still no better time to head down to Liquorland and grab your favourite drink.
Cold drinks, hot pies,
Oof.
Nico. We like them week to week.
It's a perfect combination, that is for sure. Liquorland, from the land you love. Please drink responsibly. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the AskPiesNation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold. I'm Nicholas Sacco, your host for this week's episode 14 of Season 5, or episode 127. If you're counting from the beginning, it was certainly a roller coaster of a game with lots of things to discuss. But the clear thing is we are on an 8-game winning run and still sit firmly on top of the ladder after our 63-point win over the Eagles in Perth. We'll discuss that win over West Coast, get to some potential All-Australians on AskPiesNation, wrap up some VFL, and chat with another Guess the Crowd competition winner. The two-man pod has been subbed out. Luke Humphries is out. Jack Dugan, Marcus Callahan joins me in the studio. Boys, great to keep that winning run intact. It was a bit scary at times, I must say, but pulled through for a pretty professional performance.
Nico, Jack, great to be back in the studio. Weird game of footy on the weekend, guys. It was quarter 1 and quarter 4 where you were quite happy to watch the Pies go about their business. Not sure what happened in the middle. Really strange ebbs and flows to this match, Jacko, but we got the big win in the end, and that's what counts.
Yes, it was a strange game of footy, and I think Nico mentioned as well, but it was still professional in the way we were still able to go out and put them to the sword and really get a percentage-boosting win, 63 points. That shouldn't go unnoticed. I feel like last week against North, we probably allowed them back into the game, not into the game, but we certainly didn't allow us to get the rewards in terms of a big score, big percentage boost, but we did this week, so that was pleasing to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we won't talk about those middle quarters, I don't think, because even the best of us were starting to struggle to comprehend how it was so close. The Eagles had a couple of men down in their rotation already, and we seemed to be flying pretty well until, that third term. It got to within 14 points, and we just didn't know where to go. I think there were a couple of factors as to why that was the case, which we'll get to pretty shortly with our review, but nonetheless, pretty important to get the win in that respect as well. We have the highest percentage in the comp as a result. And we're sitting, as we said, firmly a game clear on top of the ladder. Just got to get Port down a little bit and we can just get that gap even clearer. But let's get straight into what took place over in the West with the pie that caught your eye. Jack, who have you gone for this week?
Pie that caught my eye this week, Nico, is Taylor Adams. I had a bit of a call a few eps ago that I thought Tay was building towards something big form-wise. Now, I've got to say the jury's very much still out on that, but I thought Saturday's game was a step in the right direction for Tay, so I'm still holding out hope that he is in fact building into some of the form we've seen him in the past. He's somewhat of a crossroads, I feel, not so much with the position or his selection in the team, but his position in the team, with blokes like Tom Mitchell coming in and Tom Mitchell, Jordan De Goey working so well in the guts. I'm struggling to see Tay Adams get a hell of a lot of centre bounce time, so his role sort of has to be adapted into around the ground, and I think he can be a unbelievable asset for us around the ground if he can get going. I don't think we're going to see the 35, 40 disposal games that we might have seen in the past from him, but he's going to have an impact in other ways. Had 23 disposals and a superb goal on Saturday, and I think he's been hitting the scoreboard quite regularly this year, which is something we really love to see from Tay. So fingers crossed, a bit of a watch this space.
Before we get to yours, Marcus, I want to chat on Taylor Adams because I thought it was his best game of the season by far. You look at some of the numbers, 23 disposals, which was a season high, but what was also a season high was his efficiency. 83% he went with his disposals, and that's the most he's had all season, and well above his career average as well. He's been under the pump for his efficiency around and his inability to find targets, especially by foot. His decision making has been a bit poor of late, but I think with Jordan De Goey having a quieter day, someone else had to stand up in that midfield. We knew that Tom Mitchell was performing pretty high standards, but for Taylor Adams to come out and play the way he did, 11 score involvements, which was an equal career high, 7 marks, which is a season high for him, 481 metres gained, 8 inside 50s, 22 pressure acts. This is the Taylor Adams that we've come to expect for many years. It's the Copeland Trophy winning Taylor Adams, and hopefully this is the form that we can see for many more weeks to come, especially with a bit of an absence in midfield.
No doubt, and only 76% game time for Tay as well. So when you consider his impact on the match, I thought in the third term, he was the guy who actually went and found the footy, particularly when Elliot Yeo and Dom Sheed were just running rings around us at the stoppage. He did start to stem the flow when it got back to uncomfortable margin of less than 3 goals. So huge game from Tay. He was the one I was going to go with as well. But the player that caught my eye this week was actually Jack Ginnivan. And I think we need to speak to Ginnivan's impact, because with Beau McCreary coming out of the side, it's a very interesting selection dilemma for the match committee going into King's birthday, because I don't know about you boys, but I'm just not seeing enough impact off the ball from Ginnivan. And I felt as if when this game started to turn against us, he was one guy, particularly with Beau going off the park, who needed to find a way to create more opportunity. Fortunately, we're playing the current, well, probably the Spooners for this season, and it didn't impact too much. But how do we feel about the way that he's going about his business? We've spoken at length about the umpires being on watchful eye for the Ginnivan high tackle or no call rule, whatever you want to call it. But I'm a bit about his recent performances. So anything to offer there, boys?
Yeah, look, he got found out a little bit, particularly in those stages where the game was on the line, and unfortunately we had enough contributors around him that were able to get on top and ensure we got the win. But you see even Harvey Harrison coming in, playing a bit of a role, getting his first goal, but doing enough to prove to the selectors that he's even capable of staying in this 22 leading into this week's game. I think he definitely has struggled with form. He looked lazy out there a little bit too. For a side that, is priding itself on its tackling pressure and its ability to keep that ball in that forward half, that was something that stood out to me, as we didn't see enough of from Jack. So look, Beau McCreary coming out of his side is a fortunate silver lining for him, because it probably does mean that he plays. We're coming up against a pretty big game in King's birthday. We know what he likes to do on the big occasions, so I'm backing him to get back to his best in that week. But I am starting to lean towards where a few more lean weeks with some players coming back into the team, Jack, might suggest his spots on the line again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's on the line. I think absolutely agree with both you boys there. I did think he looked a bit lazy around the contest, especially when we didn't have the ball in our possession. And, we speak about at length about blokes like Bobby Hill, Beau McCreary, these other small forward types that do, perhaps have quieter games, being the nature of the small forward position, but they still find the ways to, try and impact the play off the ball. Beau, everyone knows how good he is at that, and I think Bobby does a fair job as well with it for his size. So yeah, Jack, I feel like he needs to get more active and be on his toes a bit more when we don't have the ball, and look to take some bodies, lay some tackles, and just apply a bit of pressure.
And probably the beneficiary of some injury or selections that have gone Ginnivan's way earlier in the season, like he's kind of either been the sub or found his place on the park due to other injuries. Jamie Elliott perhaps being the most recent one, but he'll probably come back into the side for King's birthday. So some interesting small forward selection propositions, Nico, but the pie that caught your eye.
Well, I'm sticking with the forwards. I'll go on with Brody Mychek as the pie that caught my eye. He had 15 touches, kicked 3 goals. He started with 0 goals too, so he was able to work his way back into the game pretty quickly, but it's just that workhorse ability that he's got inside that forward 50 that helped will us over the line again. 11 marks, which was an equal Collingwood high. 5 contested marks, which was a game high, and the most he's had since this time last year in King's birthday in 2022. 11 scoring involvement, so it's about that unselfishness that he has an ability of having. 5 inside 50s, 457 metres gained. I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later in AskPiesNation, but he is certainly playing to a level that is making people suggest he might be playing All-Australian football. Career, he's in his peak right now, just the way that he's been not only contributing to the scoreboard, but it's, his marking ability, the fact that he's been able to get teammates into the game so often has just been so superb. I think he's 7th in the Coleman race at the moment. He's top 10 for marks inside 50. He's top 15 or 20 for contested marks. It's just brilliant to see him come to this point at the moment that he's having such an impact. We talked about at the start of the year who we thought our leading goal kick was going to be, and it had been Checkers for so many years. I know we were sort of wanting to lean towards somebody else and a Dan McStay or even a Bobby Hill, but it's just proven that over the first half of the season that there's a reason that Checkers has been so relied on over the last few years, and he delivered again in a game that got tight when it did need to be. He stood up, kicked some crucial goals, as we've seen happen many times this year, and delivered in spades again. He's playing an outstanding brand of football at the moment.
Is he in the conversation
I
for
think so.
All-Australian?
I think so.
Really?
It was mentioned in the commentary as well. I don't know if you guys heard towards the end of the match that he might seriously be putting his hand up. I'm not sure if he makes the final squad, I must say, unless he goes on and kicks 60, 70 goals this year. But just the way he's playing his football, and I know it helps playing in a side that's going so well at the minute, but I think some discussions need to be had, and that's my bias being taken out as much as possible, Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talk about there being some selection headaches in the small forward community. I think that's another thing we're sort of not speaking about is that Brody Myercheck, Ash Johnson combination that has worked so well over the past sort of 3 to 4 weeks to a month that we've been missing Dan McStay. So that's what I'm interested to see with Dan being, I believe, available for selection this week and what that may look like for Ash and Brody's game. Do we go the 3 talls? Does one of them have to come out? But I think, Checkers couldn't sing his praises high enough, gets to every contest, brings the ball to ground every time. And, it's nice to see him getting on the end of a few goals and getting some reward as well.
McStay, Lipinski and Jamie Elliott all available for selection for King's birthday. So good luck being the selection panel, I think, trying to make your mind up about which players you bring into the team. Let's get a bit more into this West Coast review because it was really almost a game of two halves. It happened at different passages. We pretty much smashed them from pillar to post in the first term, established a comfortable lead, let them get back into the contest as things transpired, and then we're able to put them away in the final term. I don't want to go any further without chatting about this Jordan De Goey suspension that's lingering because, not that we need to bring it up, because about everyone in Australia is talking about it at the moment. It's remarkable just how much this is blown out, and I just can't believe that people are talking about this in ways that I wouldn't have thought so. Anyway, I won't get into that specifically. I want to get your thoughts on the actual bump itself. It got sent straight to the tribunal yesterday. It will be taking place tomorrow. Usually that would mean it's no less than 3, unless Collingwood want to challenge it, of course. But in terms of the actual decision-making to go for the bump in that scenario, and then in terms of the consequences that's going to have on our team over the next, at least, I'd say, month of football, what did you make of that whole situation?
Look, he has to wear the punishment of what comes his way, Nico. There's no doubt about it. It's a textbook for what not to do with the new rules being brought in. Had ample time to tackle rather than bump. He just left the ground, which I'm sure won't work in his favour, and he collected poor Elijah Hewitt square in the face as well. So missing, he'll undergo the concussion protocols and probably misses next week. So tick, tick, tick. Yep. I don't know all the technical terminology as well as you will, Nico, but I would have thought that you would be taking the 3 weeks and not trying to do anything, shall we say, that would test the tribunal to give you 4 or 5, because that's going to result in Geordie De Goey not playing as much footy this year. The only positive I could think was maybe Nick Dacos gets a few more votes over the next month of footy, just trying to shine a positive light on it. But he's got a very hard case to argue, Jack.
Yeah, it's everything the AFL doesn't want to see, isn't it, really? So I think, as Marcus said, Geordie's just going to have to suck it up and deal with the consequences. No way sticking up for the bump at all. And as we just said, he's going to cop 3 to 4 weeks, and he's just going to have to deal with that. And I think we as fans are pretty comfortable with that decision when they come to it. But what I'm really been sort of annoyed at the past 24 to 48 hours, Nico, is this grouping in of this bump and this football act, because that's what it is. It's a football act. It's not. I don't think he hasn't king hit him.
Assault.
Yeah, he hasn't king hit him behind the play 100 metres off the ball. He hasn't done the old Andrew Gaff and whacked him in the chin 100 metres off the ball. He's made a split second decision, and we can all look at it as long as we want in slow motion and say, could he have done this, could he have done that? But he's made a split second decision to bump. In our game, we don't wear helmets, protective gear. If you miss your bump and jump in the air and get him, that's literally a matter of centimetres. Yep. He's got him in the head, he's knocked him out, and he's going to deal with the consequences. Don't then group that split second decision with off-field discretions and say things like, "Oh, De Goey again in hot water." If this was anyone else of the competition, such as a Scott Pendlebury or a Patrick Dangerfield or a Marcus Bontempelli, He gets him high. Oh, Bondapale is going to get 3 weeks, and that's the end of the story. It doesn't get grouped in with all these off-field antics that we have as fans have been frustrated with Geordie in the past. It's just not the same thing, and I'm really a bit frustrated over this whole fiasco that's been made of De Goey once again landing himself in hot water, because the work he's put in since coming back from his suspension last year, I think he's been in career best form for us. Certainly top 3 in the Copeland Trophy, our top 3 best players. So he's put in a tremendous amount of work, and for the footy media and the wider landscape to try and diminish that by grouping this split-second decision with all these past discretions, I just don't agree with that at all.
That's at you, Kane Corns. That's exactly what that rant's been all about. No, I agree 100%. You hit the nail on the head there, I think, because the commentary around it has been pretty disgraceful of late, just about the proportions that some people are taking this to. At the end of the day, it was an act that should be punished, but not to a point that people are trying to make it out to be. It's just ridiculous. But the reason I brought that up so early is because I think that was a turning point of the game, because for me, things started to go a bit pear-shaped after that hit. We sort of dropped our heads a little bit because we knew what was going to come. De Goey was definitely off his game, and that in turn just made the midfield a little bit more stagnant. West Coast were able to chip away at that deficit and get it to within that 3-4 goal margin that got us under the pump. Now, look, might sound very arrogant. I still didn't think we were going to lose the game. I still feel like we had enough composure to win the momentum back, but did it worry you at all seeing just how easily a side like West Coast, who have struggled to get things together for, sometimes no longer than 10-minute patches this season, were able to cut our lead so fine?
Yes, because of the lack of control at the stoppage. That was the game right there across quarter 2 and quarter 3. They were just getting repeat efforts and pushing the ball in their direction. Fortunately, our defence was able to counter time and time again, and we shouldn't forget what an incredible job they're doing. This remains so organised even when it gets a little bit testy, but unfortunately we did leak some goals, and that's where I think some of the midfielders perhaps had days that weren't necessarily representative of how the unit was performing across the guts. So it was frustrating, it was concerning, but like you, Nick, I knew that eventually the tides would turn, because they were throwing the kitchen sink and the bathroom sink at us just to get within a few goals.
Well, like we said, they were, I think, 2, even at times 3 men down in rotation, and we knew that was going to catch up eventually. And full credit to West Coast as well for giving us all they had, and, for it's promising signs for them that they were able to get so close, really, before we put them away. But what about you, Jack? Were there any danger signs in your head seeing the second and third quarter unfold as it did?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be an interesting one, I think, now to watch moving forward, what our setup looks like without De Goey for, that 3 to 4 weeks. He plays an integral role in that, and I speak about Tay not getting a lot of centre bounce work. Does now he go back into that sort of, but he's an inside mid. De Goey's been transformed to more of a outside runner. So that's going to be an interesting one to watch going forward. I think I'm still really happy with the way we went about it. We talk about it being a professional win, not too dissimilar to games like the Carlton game, where the opposition team has periods in the game where they're on top and they're taking a hold of it and they're coming back into the contest, and we allowed them probably to get too close for comfort there, but I think the professionalism comes from our ability when the ball goes up the other end. We take our chances every time. I think, again, Bobby Hill he got 1 or 2 chances just to keep them at that arm's length, and then that just, it sort of bridges the gap a little bit further, and all of a sudden it's not so it's easy for them to come back into the contest as hard and fast as what they were. So, and then you see in the last quarter the bubble burst, and we're able to carry on with it. So really happy with that, because it's not something we've been able to say of Collingwood sides over the past sort of 10 to 15 years, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. A very good point. Again, you mentioned midfielders having off days. That certainly wasn't the case for Tom Mitchell. I think he was outstanding once again. 30 touches, 13 tackles, just highlighting that pressure that we like to bring around the contest, and he was able to deliver once again in that fact. 15 contested possessions, 350 metres gained, 6 inside 50s. Another goal to add to his 2023 tally, which is also incredible to witness. But he's also putting together an underrated season in my eyes, because we've come to expect him of recent years getting your 35-40s each and every week. He hasn't been doing that, but arguably he's playing as good as he was in his Brownlow year.
Yeah, it's absolutely in the conversation, and when you're part of a winning side, that always helps as well. I think with Tom Mitchell, he had look, you look at his game on paper and you're like, wow, that was amazing. We win by 10 goals. It was parts of that third term. I'm not sure if Degoe and Mitchell were rotating on Yo, but I was just like, it was frustrating to see us lose so many clearances despite Darcy Cameron having his way in the ruck. And I thought he was another notable performer as well on an underdone ruckman duo for the opposition. But all things being equal, it's a pass for all the midfielders. They had a good day. The team wins by 10 goals. No one's really shining a light on it. It was just interesting that we have won the clearance or at least drawn equal in the last sort of 6 to 8 weeks. And against the would-be Spooners, I'm already calling them, is that just something that we should be noting? Or should we not be reading into it because we win by 10 goals?
Would be Spooners correct, but I think if you look at across the ground, the area that they're perhaps most strongest in, again, they're the 18th place team getting smacked by 10 goals every week. Dom Sheed, I think, had
42 touches.
I'm hearing it's the most footy I've seen Elliot Yeo get his hands on in the better part of 2 years. Andrew Gaff was getting himself involved. So I think experienced heads that have been missing for quite a long time against Collingwood at home, I think lifted and perhaps made our midfield not look as good. But I'd still completely agree with Marcus. But I think if there was an area where West Coast were going to attempt to break even or match us, it was going to be in the guts.
Well, the clearance work was what got North back into the game last week too. That patch in that third and fourth term was them winning clearance after clearance, and we couldn't stop that. And it was almost what won them the game against Essendon on Sunday as well. So it is a little bit of a concern for us to try and fix up. But I also know that there are so many other facets to our game that we just get on top of so easily.
Exactly.
That absolutely helps us get. And one of those was our intercept game, because you look at the back six, incredible this stat I want to read to you. Quainer, Murphy and Moore combined for 20 intercepts. 13 of them were marks. From those intercepts alone, 6 straight goals. Incredible.
And that's the thing, we're so well organised in defence that if we lose the clearance game, look, in finals, I don't really want this sort of trend emerging, shall we say. We need to be winning the contested ball, but when you have a back six that are so good at generating new scoring chains, you lose the clearance, but you kind of know that we will back our defenders to either push it out of bounds or launch a new attack. So it's a very nice place to be, knowing you've got a reliable defence.
Yeah, and I mean 71 points to 10 from intercepts. I mean that's all you really need to say about that type of game. Another one was the forward line. I mean, not too much to mention there, other than great to see so many another big spread of goal kickers, should I say. 4 players with 3 goals. Checkers, Hill, Johnson, after a quiet start for him, was able to get involved a little bit. But the man we are yet to talk about still is Nick Dacos, 30 touches and 3 goals. I mean, pretty rare to be waiting this long, as we seem to mention. But went at 70% disposal efficiency for his 30 touches, 17 kicks, 9 score involvements, 626 metres gained, which was a game high, 6 rebound 50s and 5 inside 50s. So with no Degoe there, maybe we will be seeing a little bit more midfield time from Dacos. But regardless, he is the one to lead us the way, I think, at least over the next month.
He just gave the whole AFL a lesson on what happens if you are off Nick Dacos for a split second. He'll just keep running and running and running, and he puts himself in the best possible position to set himself and other teammates up for a score. So yeah, it was a good little story to him today. I think he was running to the bench for one of his goals and got turned back and then just ran straight for the forward line and got himself on the end of one, which is another example of cleverness. But yeah,
Ginnivan was left in his tracks to say the least. But that was a beautiful goal that he kicked from 50, with the 1-2 from Geordie to Goey, and the one from him and Pendles just love finding each other, don't they?
Yeah.
In the first term, that beautiful snap off one step gets the bounce of God over the players, and through it goes.
Such a dynamic duo, those two, isn't it? Coxie and Cameron, also ones to discuss. You mentioned Darcy Cameron was pretty serviceable. I'd have to agree. Definitely got the better of his opponents around the ground. Mason Cox coming in, kicking 2 early goals as well, just getting himself nice and confident. I was hoping he was able to get a bit more on the score sheet. Wasn't to be, but just showing again how important those two have been for this side, and going again on Saturday, they were brilliant.
I think the luxury we have at the moment is that there's no noticeable drop-off in the ruck stocks throughout the entire match. It's not like Carlton where Silvani goes into the ruck and you're like, what is going on here? But
Sorry,
do you know what I'm trying to say? Or even at Essendon, where Draper is clearly superior to Phillips, or our ruck combo is pretty even across the entire game, even when they rotate. So I think that's starting to build some momentum into the season, and I'm liking what I'm seeing because Coxie is getting around the ground better than I've ever seen him. But Jacko, do you think there's any changes to this ruck duo throughout the season 2023?
Not at all. Not at all. I think when you're not that they've both had amazing standout games in their career, both Darcy and Mason. But I think when you're not talking about your ruckman straight away, that's a really, really good thing.
Yep.
And when you are talking about them in the great line, that's fantastic as well. But when you're not talking about them, it means they're doing a job. And if they're not getting battered, they're at least halving the contest and giving out midfielders half a chance at least. So yeah, no.
Where do you think their heads were at, Nico? Because we think it still hurts me to see Brodie Grundy in a Melbourne top, but we talked about him as our ruckman week after week after week, and we know that they're an incredibly important pillar of a football team, but they're not the absolute breadwinners. Sorry, Mason Cox. Compared to the midfield. So, what are your thoughts, Nico, on how we've changed that dynamic from last season to this season?
Well, hindsight's a wonderful thing now, isn't it? Because you wonder what would have happened if Grundy played a full season last year before getting traded, because it meant that this duo wouldn't have really come to light till the start of the year in 2023. So it's been tested. We've seen other people come into the role with McStays and Johnston's and Billy Frampton, but these two seem so set and so in sync each and every week. It's fantastic. And, for them to have played a big role for us last year, at a time where we were expecting Grundy to just come back into the team and take one of their spots. Didn't end up playing the rest of the year, but it didn't make a single difference because those two were playing out of their skin. They don't need to play out of their skin this year, I should say, because they know the roles that are within the team, and they're putting some excellent performances together.
I'm running the risk saying this, sorry, Marcus, for 4 Kings' birthday, Nico, but have Mason and Darcy on Saturday's game not achieved anything that Gawn and Grundy have achieved for Melbourne this year at any stage? I mean, when you look at, they're meant to be the two most dominant ruckmen the game's seen in the past 15 years or so, and really they haven't beaten a team off their own back. So I mean, I'm gonna probably eat my words. Maybe a week away from now.
Not at all. We don't do
I know
that,
Brodie's looking forward to that contest, but. Yeah, that's just it's one of those things. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, but we're going absolutely fine without Brodie.
Yeah, you would have to say that we go in backing our system, and part of that is not being so reliant on one ruckman. And I don't know what the dynamic at the D's is like between Gawn and Grundy. They clearly love playing with each other, but I don't know if they've hit their straps the way some may have expected. Maybe not dissimilar to McStay and Myercheck, still working out what that best rotation and how to, I guess, support one another's games rather than trying to be the first choice, shall we say. But, fascinating a relationship between those two coming up this week.
Always helps, Nico, before we move on from this topic, always helps as well having more midfield players like the Tom Mitchells, Jordan De Goey's coming in and being able to sort of pull their weight in the clearance work. I feel like when Grundy was at the peak of his powers, he was our clearance game, really. So, it's good to have those guys in, and they certainly help make the ruckman look good.
Which I think is what Grundy is doing the same at Melbourne at the moment, trying to be those clearance winners, which is an incredible thing when you've got Petrarca and Oliver and the like as well. So, fascinating contest coming up, these two midfields on Monday. Anything else to add from this West Coast game before we move on to our votes, boys? It was pretty stock standard apart from, I guess, the topics we've discussed.
Nothing to add, Nico. I think, just again, the fact that we've put together wins that are more than 10 goals rather than less than 10 points is very welcome this season. So, more of it.
Yep. Bobby Hill for mine, Nico. Was the other one I wanted to just quickly touch on. Sorry. His pace has got to be underrated. It's a real shame he'll be playing on Grand Final day because he'd be a $1.01 favourite to take home the Grand Final sprint, I think, for sure. He does it with such effortless, really, the way he runs away from his opponent, and then the class to be able to finish time and time again. So, really, really enjoying his work this season.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw last week, or I was mentioning about his efforts in the defensive half of the ground and how he's been able to work up and play a role in those areas too. And you look at West Coast, 100% of the time in the forward half. So definitely wasn't going to be tracking back this time around. Happy to stay well put. And why not when you go and kick 3 goals? There's no reason for you to be anywhere else than inside 50. Let's get to our votes from the weekend, boys. Interested to see where we've gone with our 3-2-1s this time.
Yeah, well, after Marcus's spiel about our midfields, I've actually changed my votes.
Have you
I had Tommy Mitchell at 2, but he just convinced me otherwise. So I've actually taken Tommy Mitchell right out of my votes.
Oof.
1 to Bobby Hill for reasons I've just mentioned.
Bobby Hill for what?
Yeah, thought his pace is on display again fully, and I think he comes into the game at times on Saturday just real teetering points for us where we just need him to finish his goal and need him just to execute, and he did, and that's a bit underrated, I think. 2 to Tay, best game we've seen from him for a long time. We spoke about that just before. 11 score involvements, I think, did you say,
yep.
Nico? Yeah, that's unreal. So hopefully more to come. Might have a bit of a different role in the next few weeks with DeGoey coming out of the side. And 3 votes, he's back up there. Nick Dacos, just 3 goals, 30 touches. What more can you say?
Yep.
Thanks, Jacko. 1 vote, I went with the future All-Australian full forward, Brody Myercheck. Yes. 2 votes to Nick Dacos, and he got a few junk time goals, a couple of junk time goals at the end there, but beautiful nonetheless. And 3 votes to Tay for high impact footy.
Tay doesn't make my votes, unfortunately. Very stiff. Shout out to him.
Please explain.
No, I thought he was solid, as I mentioned. I believe that, as I said earlier, it was one of his best games, if not his best game of the year. But I just felt, just disagreeing with you a touch here with Tom Mitchell. I thought he was just so impactful more often than not. And yes, there was that lull with the midfielders and West Coast were getting on top. But I think even then, he was still doing all he could and having that influence. And whether it was, I guess, not winning clearances necessarily, but it was laying those tackles. And I think that was a big contributor into us getting ourselves back into the contest, winning that momentum again. So he sneaks in for the 1. I gave Myercheck 2 votes. I thought he was terrific inside 50, as we've mentioned. And top votes goes to Nick Dacos, as do the fans agree with Nick Dacos getting top votes. Tom Mitchell came in with the second most, followed by Bobby Hill. Then Myercheck, Adams, Quainer, DeGoey, Dacos, Murph, and Mason Cox just rounds out the top 10. The 2 players not to get a vote was Oleg Markov and Hoskin Elliott, which we knew went down for an injury as well.
Yeah, 1 touch for Oleg.
Yes.
Not sure if that was... Did he come off the...
Yeah, he was a sub.
Yeah.
He was sub.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. I was going to say.
Yeah.
Quiet day nonetheless.
Just on the Hoskin Elliott and McCreary injuries, so it looks as though Hoskin Elliott's going to miss some time, according to reports this morning. Bo McCreary to be confirmed. I assume that would be very similar. Those 2 are going to hurt with not being in our 22 for at least the next little bit, boys.
Yeah, no doubt. I think McCreary is the obvious one that we will turn to. And my understanding is that Jamie Elliott had been nursing a shoulder injury of sorts, hence why he didn't make the trip to WA. Probably has to come back into the side, as we've already discussed. But I see his forward pressure craft being even more important than perhaps hitting the scoreboard with McCreary coming out of the team. And as for Will Hoskin Elliott, I do like the idea of a Paddy Lipinski coming in to replace him on a wing, half-forward type of position. So there is some replacements there. We're just fortunate that we have some depth in our side.
Well, this is where Jack Ginnivan needs to stand up, in my opinion. We don't have Bo McCreary there as the forward pressure, as a pressure forward, sorry. So he needs to be the one that, doesn't have to lay 15 tackles inside 50, but just be enough of a presence in there to help our fellow forwards around. How do you think those 2 people not in our 22 are going to impact us?
Yeah, I'm fearful of what life looks like without Bo McCreary, if I'm being honest, Chance. I love his work. I think he's so vital for us. He almost is the benchmark for our pressure, not in the forward line, but just around the ground for the way the whole team goes about it. We are really going to miss him. And I think we're going to miss Hoskin Elliott to a certain extent as well. I had a bit of a quieter game on Saturday, but rangy type player. He's been all up and down the ground over the past years since he's had to come into the side for an injured Pat Lipinski. But in saying that, I'm really, really keen to see how Pat Lipinski fits into this mould. Won't be getting as much midfield time with the structure that we've got, but yeah, looking forward to having him back.
Let's look at the top 5 from the fans, and I think for just the second time this year, Scott Pendlebury is out of the top 5 after a quieter game, and in comes Tom Mitchell straight into 4th spot. Darcy Moore's in 5th. Josh Dacos in 3rd. De Goey closed the gap over the last month on Nick Dacos prior to Saturday's game, but he with De Goey not receiving many votes, Nick Dacos a perfect 10. His lead goes out to 17 votes, and with De Goey going to miss the next few weeks, it might be tough for him to stop Nick Dacos, so maybe his brother can get him in form a little bit too, so we'll see how that one goes. But plenty more to discuss right after this, including AskPiesNation, VFL, and our Guess the Crowd winner, so we'll be right back. This halftime break is brought to you by Liquorland. Enjoy winter your way with Liquorland, like Carlton draft bottles available in singles, 6-packs, or slabs of 24. They go down a treat, the Carlton drafts, Jack.
Absolutely, they do, Nico. Favourite of mine, the Carlton draft stubbies, and I usually go to them after a big win from the Pies, so you can best believe I've been going to the fridge a fair bit this season. So get on down to Liquorland and get yourself some Carlton draft.
Pop into your local Liquorland today or shop online and click and collect in just 30 minutes. Liquorland, from the land you love. Please drink responsibly. Welcome back to the Pies Nation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold. Let's go right into Ask Pies Nation, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TikTok, wherever. We are everywhere, and that's how you can get involved on Ask Pies Nation. The question from Lukey this week was about All Australians, and we did mention that briefly in the first seg, but it was just simply about which players are having All-Australian calibre seasons. Now, look, there's the obvious ones, I think, at the moment. Nick Dacos and Darcy Moore are probably two that you're locking in. And, look, the fans were pretty close to agreeing in that sense. But keen to see what some of these other answers had, maybe some left field ones from a couple of our fans. So we'll start with James Legasic on Instagram. Darcy Moore is a lock and will be the captain. If Josh Dacos doesn't get named on the wing, it will be a travesty. Nick Dacos should also make it. Throw a blanket over Pendles, De Goey, Mitchell, and Murphy, all to possibly make the 40.
Right, okay. Whole sweep.
Well, have a look at some of those names. So, Pendles, I don't know if he's had he's been terrific, don't get me wrong. Has he been good enough to make a squad of 40 at least? I don't know.
Don't think so.
De Goey, does De Goey's suspension hurt his chances of
Massively.
an All-Australian? Yeah.
But yes, absolutely it does. But Tom Stewart last year, he copped a month for that hit on Dion Prestia. He was still able to make a All-Australian team.
He's been good off the field though, Jacko. This
Yeah,
is the difference.
Apparently
Correct.
so. Yeah. Tom Mitchell, I think he's a shout for a 40.
Well, if we go on to win 18, 19 games,
100%.
absolutely.
Nathan Murphy.
Murph.
I feel like Murph's growing every week. I mean, we sing his praises, I feel like, every week on the podcast. But I feel like even on Saturday, he's reading the ball as well as anyone is, and I don't mind that call actually.
We didn't get to that actually. Murph playing on the third tall forward allows him to be better at intercepting the ball via a mark rather than just killing it out of bounds, because he's not having to take such a bigger body. So Frampton in was great for our structure on that front, and
definitely.
More of it.
Luke Garwoody on Instagram also said Nathan Murphy. Cooper McKenzie, John Noble to at least be in the squad, but maybe not the final team. Does his job very well every single week.
He's just putting it on the full a little bit too often, Nico, to be a shout for the All-Australian squad. Love him, and he's amazing, but that kicking efficiency from time to time does let him down.
Daniel Horror on Instagram now. I think a few fans have had the same sense that Josh Dacos won't get in, and he'll be the stiffest person to miss the All-Australian because the AFL won't recognise wingers, as always. Now, this has been a topic of discussion about All-Australian teams for many years, how wingers have never been put in their natural position. Could Josh Dacos fall in that category, you reckon?
Well, I think he's been good enough to get himself a go in this side, regardless of position. But you see it every year. Wingers, forwards, all the midfielders just get thrown into those positions, and they've perhaps never stepped inside forward 50 for the year, or even stepped on a wing for the year. So, but I feel like Josh Dacos is having a year that could be the example of that. He's been very good, obviously biased.
Hair by Hayley Renee, Moore, Nick Dacos, Mitchell, and Bruzzy.
Brazard. I'm not sure.
Don't think so. Last year, obviously, a different story. Was just playing out of his skin.
Just ticking along this year, Braden Maynard, doing everything he has to make sure the unit is running optimally, but his individual season probably below the mark at this point in time.
Oscar Lemonidis. If we didn't have such dominant figures already in terms of Nick and Josh Dacos, Jordan De Goey, and Darcy Moore, you'd be looking at names like Nathan Murphy, John Noble, and Scott Pendlebury that would be right in the conversation and be more involved for sure. So again, those three, John Noble and Nathan Murphy, I think they've been terrific for us. Don't get me wrong. Are they in the best 6 defenders in the competition though?
That's
the question.
It's massive.
That is the question. On Twitter, Anna C 2021, checkers, and checkers. Confident that my check is one that's going to at least probably get in that squad of 40, I reckon. I don't know.
Well, why not? Why not? When you look at the big dominant forwards of the competition, I mean, Jeremy Cameron's probably he's sitting at full forward. I don't think anyone's going to dispute that. But, all the big boys we've seen down there in the yesteryear, Buddy Franklin hasn't had the year that he would have liked. Obviously entering the twilight of his career. Charlie and Harry Mackay having their struggles, and don't we love to see it, Nico?
Oh, yes, we do.
And so I think my check as that third, even fourth option up there. He's certainly putting his
sneak
name
a bench
in
spot, surely.
Yeah,
just get him in there. Ahmed on Twitter, I'd lock in Darcy Moore for fullback and captain, and Nick Dacos at halfback. De Goey would be at half forward, depending on how long his suspension is and how he responds afterwards. Josh Dacos a lock if the selectors actually put wingers on the wing. Brody Myercheck if he continues his scintillating form.
Spoken to most of those, I think, already.
Yep.
Gents.
Absolutely. Similar from Bobby on Twitter. Nick Dacos and Moore are locked in. De Goey looked like a lock until his suspension. Dacos is a lock if they pick wingers. Checkers and Titch are also a shot right now. So there's a lot of love for Brody Myercheck. I like to see it. I think he definitely deserves to be in the conversation.
No doubt.
Yeah. And it was mentioned on the broadcast as well later in the game. So I'm glad that's the case. I'll finish off with Rouds57 on Instagram, who says, just name the whole Collingwood team as the All-Australian. I like that a lot. I think that'd be good. One thing I did want to note, so in 2010 and 11, when we were rocking and playing some really good football as well, that's it. We had 4 players in the 2010 All-Australian team and 6 players in the 2011 All-Australian
is that a quiz later on?
No. I'm just highlighting.
It's a good quiz.
I'm highlighting the fact. It's a good point.
Can we make it a quiz?
All right. Name me the 4 players in the 2010 All-Australian team.
Pop quiz.
Random pop quiz. Go. Who are the 4 Collingwood players in the 2010 All-Australian team?
Dane Swan.
Scott Pendlebury.
Dale Thomas.
Not Dale Thomas. Oh, good shout, though.
He had a blinder of a season. That was that one his best player in the
1 forward, 1 defender.
comp?
Heath Shaw.
Not Heath Shaw.
Ben Reid.
Not Ben Reid.
Oh, no. Shock.
The forward should be pretty easy.
T Cloak.
No. Come on.
Did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Didac.
Come on.
Come on.
Nico's favourite of all
The
time.
defender.
That's not Reid and not... Who else did you say? No.
Heath Shaw.
Was
Not
I
Heath
left
Shaw.
footer? No.
Not that game yet.
Oh, God. Chiefers, what are we doing here? It's not the captain, is it?
Not Maxwell. People are screaming at home trying to...
People are screaming.
They are.
Shit.
In the cars.
You
at the
giving up?
radio.
Alan Tuvey? No.
Not Alan Tuvey. Harry O'Brien.
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
Okay.
And then do you want to give a crack for the 6 in 2011?
Yeah.
those 4?
Not all of those 4.
Swan.
I'll give you Swan.
Yep.
Pendlebury.
I'll give you Swan. I'll give you Pendlebury. And that's it.
T Cloak.
Cloak's in that one, yep.
Leon Davis.
Leon Davis is in
That's
that
a
one.
great get.
Had
Yep,
a great
half-back line.
season after coming back. Put
That's
him on
it.
half back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got the centre half back and a winger.
To go.
Yep.
Steele.
Not
No.
Steele.
That would have been good. That was a good guess.
But they're 2 names you've already mentioned in your guesses. So you should be able to work it out from here.
We've already guessed
Hey,
them
sure.
incorrect.
No, you've already guessed it in the previous team. You guessed them, but they weren't in there.
Yeah. Yep.
Not
Yeah.
Heath Shaw.
That was a lock. Damn it.
Ben Reid.
Ben Reid.
Yep.
Winger.
1 to go.
Winger.
Oh,
No,
not Ben Reid on the wing.
Excuse me.
We got Ben Reid, but we need to get the
You
winger.
need to get the winger. That's
Yeah.
that's probably what I should have said. Yes.
Did Daisy have a good 2011 period?
You going there?
Dale Thomas?
Yeah.
Daisy.
Daisy rounds that out. Yep. So there you go. So that's an average of 5 in 2 seasons where we were pretty much right up there. So can you think of maybe having 4? I mean, obviously 2011 was a 17-team comp. 2010 was a 16-team comp.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So 18-team comp. Do you squeeze 4 in potentially? Like,
Well,
it's a hard one.
I was going to ask this question. It's kind of relevant to what you're asking, Nico. Should there be emergencies for the All-Australian team?
No. If
Subs.
if you can't make the 22, why
It would
are you
just be
trying?
another midfielder would just be footed.
Yeah,
Exactly
yeah,
right. It
yeah.
wouldn't make a difference. Anyway, so that
I
was
reckon
Ask
that'd be
Pies.
quite funny.
That was AskPiesNation. Great little All-Australian chat there. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We are there. So make sure to get involved with AskPiesNation. Let's move on to our guess the margin and guess the crowd. 63 points was the final margin. Only one person from our fans was able to get it correctly. Fleabag is his handle on Twitter, so not Flybags.
Really creative names we get on the socials, Nico.
Fleabag, who said 63, so shout out to them. But we've got our guess the crowd competition winner, so we just smoothly put on the headphones that are underneath us as we get this ready to go. And we've got a bit of a coincidental caller coming in. We've got Glenn from WA that's about to join us. So good timing, Jack, and seeing as we just come off a win against the Weagles over in Perth.
Absolutely, it is. Hopefully, we'll find out soon enough, but hopefully you might have got along to the game on the weekend.
So let's give Glenn a call. Hopefully he realises the time. It's a few hours back there, so make sure that he's all ready to go, and we'll see what he's got to say for us.
Hello, Glenn speaking.
G'day, Glenn. It's Nicholas from the PiesNation podcast here. How you going, mate?
Pretty good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Thanks for coming on and being our Guess the Crowd competition winner for this week. We've got to ask you right off the back. We hear that you're from WA. We've just come off a nice win over the Eagles at Optus Stadium. Were you there watching, and how did you? What were your thoughts on how the Pies went about it on Saturday?
I couldn't actually get to the game because of some other commitments, but I did watch it live on TV or on my phone rather while I was doing other things. But no, it was a great win, and every year when the fixture comes out, there are two games I mark out. The ones against the Wet Toast Eagles and the ones against Carlton.
Very nice.
Glenn, thank you for coming on. Just Jack here. I'm always interested to hear from our Pies Nation fans about their journey to being a Collingwood supporter, especially interested in your story, mate, being a Western Australian. Could you run us through how you came to support the club and what that looks like nowadays?
I actually lived in Melbourne for a long time. I actually grew up in Melbourne. We came from India when I was a teenager. And 1977 was the year where, the rags to riches from the bottom of the ladder to the grand final story. So I've been hooked ever since.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, 76 we finished last. Went on and made a grand final the following year, Marcus.
Probably should have won it as well, Nico.
Don't bring that up. Anyway.
Glenn, thanks for joining us. Marcus here. Just wanted to know which of the draftees that have come to the players that have come into the side this year have you enjoyed watching the most?
Oh, probably the day before he went out, although he kind of had a few unusual games, but I think he kind of did his job. And Mitchell, I think Mitchell's been the standout of the ones that have come in so far, yeah.
Now, I've been to WA to watch Collingwood play before, and it was against West Coast, and I know they get pretty rowdy over there, which we don't like too much. But has it been, I don't know how long you've been in WA for, you said, but what's it been like being a Collingwood fan in a state that's just been, that's obviously just got the two teams in it. And I guess being a bit of a minority in the sense that you have to deal with West Coast and Freo supporters all day and every day. What's that situation been like for you?
Oh, mate, it's been terrible. I've been here 20 years. And my kids played for a team that wore West Coast Eagles colours. How do you reckon I felt?
Oh, no good. No good. Look, we probably shouldn't bring it. In fact, I was going to touch on the grand final, but I'm not even going to bother. What do I roll with? Glenn, what is your stance? I'm going to go with it again, boys.
Okay, go on.
Righto. Above the age of 14, adults wearing jerseys over the top of their shirts on the way to football, yes or no?
No.
Oh, no, that's our first no.
We
go.
Can we get an explanation?
Yes.
Oh, look, I think it's something that at the game it's okay, but wearing it around in public, I've seen some adults wearing it around in public, and that's, I don't know, it looks a bit odd.
Fair enough. No, got to have a bit of competition, Jack. You can't just all be in one way.
Looks especially odd if it's purple and white or blue and gold as well, Nico.
That's exactly, or navy blue. Just before we let you go, Glenn, what we like to do when we get our fans on is ask about a unique moment that stands out to you in your time following the Pies. It might not necessarily be the big grand final or the massive finals moment, even though we've had plenty of those, but what's a game or a player or even a moment that stood out to you in your time following the Pies that you always look back on with great memory?
Oh, look, one of the stories I always tell is our first child was due to be born during the 1990 grand final. I said to my wife, Dale, for the next couple of hours, you're on your own. If anything happens, we'll get
That is gold.
That is top of the list there. That is fantastic. And did that eventuate?
No. He luckily he held off and came a few days later. But all four of my kids, all four boys, have middle names that are related to Collingwood. The eldest boy has Lee. The second one has Francis, Tony Francis, the star, one of the good players from the 90 grand final. And then Severio Anthony after the Rocker.
Yes, that's mad.
And the youngest one we named Nathan, but unfortunately he's been kidnapped by his grandmother, and his mother supports Hawthorn. Poor kid.
Oh no,
that is quality. That is true Collingwood fandom right there. Love it, Glenn. Thank you so much for coming on and giving us some of your time, and hopefully we're celebrating lots of wins throughout the rest of the season.
Look, thank you for your work, lads, and it's been great to listen to you for the last few years. Well done, and go Pies.
Thanks, Glenn. Good on you.
There we go. That was Glenn joining us on our Guess the Crowd competition. That could be you if you guessed the crowd closest. So be sure to keep an eye out for the game day posts supplied by Luke in the lead up to our matches. Guess the crowd, and if you are closest to the final margin, that will be you joining us on Guess the Crowd. Boys, that was awesome from Glenn. Love those couple of stories and a unique experience from someone in WA.
And some unique middle names as well. Nico, we love that. I don't think I've ever heard of someone going to that extreme. Maybe the dog getting a mention, i.e. Pendles.
Yes, shout out to Luke. Severio, have you ever heard a middle name Severio or someone? Do you think Severio Rocker would ever think that someone would be calling their child or children after him?
Well, if he ever makes it onto the podcast, we can let him know that is fact. So
that would be the plan. Hopefully we can get him on one day. All right, well, let's move on to the VFL wrap because the winning ways continued into the VFL, Marcus, and we headed to one of my favourite places, the northern suburbs, of course, and taking on the Bull Ants. It was a nice win in the end for the Pies.
Yes, and it was on TV, so I was able to catch the last quarter of that game. Look, it wasn't a dissimilar game to the ones, getting off to a very, very handy 4-5 goal lead at the quarter time siren, and really the Pies did not let up from there on, not letting the Bull Ants back into the match. So we run out victors, big victors, 115-64. The Northern Bull Ants, who I think were on the brink of collapse in recent seasons. A couple of years ago
they were, yeah.
Is that right, Nico?
Yep, so they pretty much folded because they had that affiliation with Carlton. And then when COVID hit, they couldn't really afford to keep that affiliation going. So they disbanded for a bit, but just before the season started, 2020, came back. Josh Fraser was a big part of that, coaching that side and getting them back to playing regular football. And yeah, they've been able to keep themselves going ever since.
Yeah, so great to see that they're one of those standalone teams, which are becoming few and far between. But to their dismay, we just smashed them all over the park, to be perfectly honest. And maybe it is that ex-affiliation with Carlton that contributed to that, Nico. But just a few noteworthy performers as always. Finn McRae was very good out of the guts, as was Tom Wilson Sr. Two Tom Wilsons in the VFL side there, Nick. But the other Tom Wilson that we may know from a few AFL appearances had 4 goals, as did Sam Glover. So they're starting to really click in that forward line week to week, which is wonderful. The other one to talk about is Nathan Kruger. Found 3 goals for the match, but came off with a supposed ankle injury in the last term, so we'll have to keep an eye on him with the good old injury report midweek. Josh Carmichael also influential out of the guts too. But for that extra layer, that deep analysis, we will head to the Surge.
He's all over it as always, is Surge. VFL notes, Glover is a gun, was the way he started. Best game from Cully, Steen and Krugs. The latter hurt his ankle, did return to the ground. Poor in the middle, our scores coming from turnovers mainly. The Pies pressure very patchy. Jeddah, Tards, Huswaite, Begg and Josh Carmichael down today. Freeze in favour of the Bullants, so just a little side note for him just to add that one. Centre of the ground, a bog. Game was nearly cancelled as to how muddy the conditions were. They did look pretty ordinary, I must say, in the middle of the ground.
Like being tackers again.
Yes. Both coaches were ex-Pies. Obviously, Josh Fraser's coaching our VFL side, but Brodie Holland, as we mentioned, coaching the Bullants. The Pies can still make finals. They play 4 teams below them in the Swans, Frankston, Sandringham, and the Bulldogs to wrap up. Kruger goal of the day, Steen mark of the day. Go Pies.
Oscar Steen was quite good, so that was good to see as well. Now, 4 and 5, 13th on the ladder, and we play Casey, who are sitting 5th in I still can't believe it, a 21-team competition is the VFL.
Remarkable, isn't it?
It is wild, but we have some work to do after a good start to the season, Nico. I think that we get the job done over Casey, at Casey on Monday, I believe. So look out. No, that's Sunday, sorry. On Sunday, 1:05. So get down to, is that close enough to you, Jacko, to make?
Yeah, it's probably apart from Frankston, that's probably the next closest VFL ground. Yeah, might have to head on down.
Might get a report from you next week.
Yeah, maybe.
Very nice.
Apologies in advance if you did.
Let's get to the VFLW report as well. The Pies played the bottom-placed winless Darebin Falcons and won pretty comfortably, 59 points in the end. Shout out to Jess Bays, who's averaging 27.5 disposals. She finished with 38 touches and 2 goals, so that is a perfect performance from her. That win gets us into 3rd spot, equal on points with the Cats, and a game behind the top of the place, Southern Saints. We take on Carlton next week, who are sitting in 8th spot, 2 places behind the final top 6, and there's only a few games to go, so 3 games to go in fact, so some pretty vital games coming up to ensure we keep our place in the top 6 intact. Shout out as well to our netballers who, after a turbulent few weeks with, of course, the side coming to an end at the end of the season, were able to get an upset victory over the top of the table Adelaide Thunderbirds at home. Their last game at John Cain Arena, a 3-goal win for them, so great to see the Pies netballers get on top. Before we wrap up, I want to touch base on this King's Birthday game because we know how important it is on field. It's just as important off field. We know that Freeze M&D has been such an incredible thing that has come out from this game over the last 8 or so years, and it's on again. And we encourage everyone, of course, to go get their beanies and show support as best we can. But with the actual game coming up, it's such an important clash. It's almost an 8-point game, just knowing how tight it is in that 3rd to 9th spot on the ladder. I know we're well ahead at the moment, but we can easily fall back into that area if we're not careful. So just want to get your thoughts briefly, boys, on that game, what you expect Melbourne to bring after a pretty lacklustre game against the Blues from them on Friday night, and I guess some of those changes you are expecting from our 22.
Yeah, separate the men from the boys, I think is the best way I could put this match, Nico, particularly if we do get up. We'll have a very nice break on even the top 4, when you consider Port are in the hunt to try and match us, but really we're a few games away from really bursting this season open, which is incredible to think. I am really looking forward to the challenge of Clayton Oliver actually coming back in and seeing how we go against the D's with effectively a full midfield at their disposal. Degoe out, absolutely, it's a bit like losing 2 players because we know how much he loves the big scene, but at the same time it presents a unique opportunity for Nick Dacos to play some more midfield minutes, and I'm not sure if he gets tagged in this match, like maybe Viney goes into Nick Dacos for a little bit, but I really think both sides will back their midfields to try and get the ascendancy, and we're licking our lips, of course, for Gawn, Grundy, v Cox and Cameron, so it's all set, it's all ready to go, but what will be a huge say in the rest of the season, I really believe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to get a really, really good look at where we're at, Nico. I know that might be a bit silly considering we're 11-1 and a game clear on top, but it's been a while since we've come up against a really good opposition. I mean, we thought we were going to get it. We've spent a fair bit of time potting Carlton, but we thought we were going to get against Carlton.
We can keep going if you
want. They didn't really provide, and a few other times where we've come up against big teams, a few injury woes have have gone our way but haven't gone their way. So coming up against a pretty much fully fit Melbourne. And I went to that game against Carlton last Friday night, and it's definitely one of the worst games of footy I've attended live. But, in transition, they still look as quick and as fluent as they possibly have. Friday night, there was a few skill errors. So they're not. I wouldn't look too far into that game. I think they're still up there. They can match their best from their premiership year. Really, really keen. Close eye on Brodie Grundy this week.
Yeah,
I think he's a bit of fire in the belly about this game. If anyone who's watched the player agent documentary that's out on Stan, looking forward to that clash the moment he got traded. So yeah, that'll be one to watch for sure. So hopefully Darcy and Mason Cox will need to be on their toes for sure.
Do you think he's copping a boo from his supporters? I would hope not.
Oh, they're savage. the Collingwood supporters. I wouldn't put it past them.
What do you think?
Always got to be lenient when we're the people getting rid of them.
I think so.
Yeah,
there's a difference, isn't it?
Yeah.
One matchup I'm looking forward to, and assuming it happens for most of the game, Darcy Moore on Jacob Van Ruin, because he has been in terrific form at the moment for the D's, and he's probably been their most consistent tall inside 50. So yeah, can't wait to see how that one goes.
He's an aerial presence, and now that I think about it, who do we like going to Bailey Fritsch? Because he's the guy that I always get so nervous about, given how deadly he is in front of goal. Is Murph the type who could go to him?
It's a hard one because Fritsch is very good overhead, very good at taking a mark, but also just as good on the ground. So my immediate reaction is Murph as well, but maybe a Noble or even a Quainer to match.
I wouldn't mind a Quainer on him, to be honest.
But I don't mind
the
idea about a Quainer on him. He's been just on Isaac Quainer. I think his last month has been super impressive and has built in confidence over the course of the month. So yeah, he's been really good.
That's why I want to see him on Fritsch. I think he's got, as you mentioned, the speed, but also talked about Fritsch's marking ability. How impressive has Quainer's been over the last month as well. He's been playing like he's 10 feet tall the way he's been going at some of those balls. So that would be the matchup I'm looking towards. So we'll see how that one goes. But boys, Tuesday headline to wrap up. I'll say Tuesday because obviously we're playing on the Monday next week. So what are we leaning towards here? Tuesday headline, and if it doesn't contain it, who's your Neil Danaher trophy going to?
Well, I was about to wrap them all up in one.
Go on, do it.
I know Nick, I'm very tempted to go with Nick, but Josh Dacos takes home the Neil Danaher. Is it medal or trophy?
I think it is a trophy. Yes.
Josh Dacos takes home the Neil Danaher trophy.
Yeah, well, that was my headline. Nico, not Josh Dacos, but I've gone. I believe there isn't any two-time winners of the Neil Danaher trophy.
Is that right?
Off the top of my head, just off the top of my head, maybe there might be. But I've gone Mason Cox becomes the first two-time Neil Danaher trophy winner.
That would be enormous, given who he's got to play on.
Yeah, it's just funny because it's one of those weeks where we probably don't expect or require him to really step up or come to the fore for us being, we've got a bit of midfield issues with De Goey coming out. We're coming up against one of the best midfields in the comp. But I reckon Mason, could wind the clock back a bit. 2018 prelim vibes, Nico, hopefully.
Does like playing against Melbourne, I must say. I'll wrap mine into one as well. I'll say Darcy Moore wins the Neil Danaher trophy. I think if we are going to win this game, as much as the midfield is important, if the Demons get on top of us in that area of the ground, we need to be confident, as we have been all year, in our defensive structures. And I think that means that Darcy Moore gets on top of Van Ruin. He's an intercept king once again, and that'll be enough to see us take home the win. So they're the headlines, but we won't know exactly how they'll go until next week. But until then, Jack and Marcus, thanks as always for coming on.
Thank you, boys.
Thank you, boys. Good to be here.
I've been Nicholas Sacco. You've been listening or watching to the Pies Nation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold. Thanks for listening to the Pies Nation podcast, and thanks to Liquorland, who are proud partners of the show. Enjoy winter your way with Liquorland. Liquorland, from the land you love. Please drink responsibly.